Hey everyone, it's Holly from Holly's Pandorium. I'm back and I have a very special guest. It's Al Santariga. Yay! He's otherwise known as the Squatch Father, and he has got some really cool stories to talk about, or a really cool story to talk about. But I know with Al, there's always more to the story than what you think. And so hold on to your butts. It's going to be awesome. So please, Al, if you would, share with us about your first experience with a Bigfoot type of creature and what happened and where were you?
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me, Holly. It's always a pleasure to be on
Yes.
your show and to talk to you. We could talk for hours, you know
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
But it was 1974. It was South Florida. It was a little town called Davie, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was on the outskirts of the Everglades.
Mm-hmm.
And Davie was a real cowboy town. No sidewalks, dirt roads. Everybody had two guns in the back of their pickup truck window. The biggest thing that happened at Davie was the rodeo on the 4th of July. That's what everybody looked forward to.
Right.
And my sister had a house out in a development called Sunshine Acres. Now,
Mm-hmm.
originally, when she built her first house, which we called the greenhouse, it was you had to go across this one lane bridge to get to this property, and it
Right.
was like a square, like a 2 mile square altogether, and there was canals all around us, and there was alligators and all kinds of stuff. I mean, when I tell you this is the deep south in 1974, they still had chain gangs cutting the grass in the
Wow.
Everglades. what
Incredible.
what what police officers on horses and
Wow.
dogs and the whole 9 yards. I never seen a chain gang before until I went down there. That was pretty wild.
Wow.
And there was plenty of alligators in those canals, no doubt about it. But her first house was a greenhouse, and that was right across the road from our best friends who lived there. These were New Yorkers too, and they had two sons that we were friends with. It was me, my cousin Anthony. He was 15, I was 12. It was our summer camp. We got sent down there every year for our summer vacation.
Right.
Um, and directly across the street was a horse rancher, and he had a big property, and he took tours out into the swamp, and we got to know his son too. He was, the between the guys across the street that knew everybody in the neighborhood, they introduced us to everybody. And at one point, my sister sold the greenhouse and moved to the back of the property. We called the Blue House. The Blue House was bigger. It had an in-ground pool. It was fenced in and was just a much nicer house. And it had a 6 foot fence that went around the sides and the back of the property. The front of the property was open with a circular driveway with a fountain. And to our south was a cattle rancher to our south. And behind the cattle rancher was the woods where the horse rancher took the tours out, where us guys would go ride our dirt bikes in the afternoon. We'd go fish in the canal. There was a part of the canal called the turnaround. We'd go fish in there. At night, we would go in there. We'd have bonfires and stuff. And it was we'd take guns out into the woods, and we'd target practice. Everybody, like I said, it was 74. Nobody was shooting anybody.
Right.
Everybody, we had all kinds of guns in the woods with us, between 22 rifles, 30s, shotguns.
Right.
Everybody down here had a gun. And
Right.
so we're down there 74. We've gone back a couple of times, 72, 73, 74, 75, and we're down there. And that particular summer there was a heat wave, and it was a drought in South Florida, and there was actually fires in the Everglades, and
Wow.
they were pushing all the animals inland.
Right.
And it's pretty wild because, my cousin Anthony and I, being from the city in New York, we go down there and we're watching the news, and I've always believed that Bigfoot was real ever since I seen the Patty video.
Right.
Um, I remember when I was like 10 years old, with all of my cousins, we all lived in the same building. So every Saturday, we would all go to the movies together, about six of us. And
Right.
after a movie one night, after one movie, we seen the trailer for the Patty video. And I remember seeing that video and saying, that thing is real. That
Yeah.
snowman in a monkey suit. And
Right.
my cousins, laid into me and everything. But I said, that thing is real. But that particular summer down there, we're watching the news and they're talking to county police and town police and state police about skunk ape sightings. And I'm like, what the hell is a skunk ape,
Yeah.
And
Right.
my sister's like, oh, that's what they call Florida Bigfoot. And I'm like, no, there's no Bigfoots in Florida. Everybody knows
Right.
the Bigfoots are in the Pacific Northwest.
Right. Yeah.
That's the only place they're at, and if my sister's like, no, they got a thing down here. It's called the skunk ape. It stinks to high heaven, and that but we thought our sister and her husband was pulling our chain, but yet
Sure.
we're seeing the cops being interviewed, on the news, and then you read about it in the local newspaper, you hear it on the radio. My sister always had music going in the house, and so there was always music being piped out all over the place, and you would hear it on the interviews on the radio, the news on the radio. So one night, it's in early July, it may have been right after the 4th of July. My cousin Anthony and I are up late watching wrestling, and something walks past the house. On one side of the house was an empty lot. It was a watermelon lot. They had wild watermelons in it, and like the back end of the development there was houses every so often. There wasn't built up like the front end, and so something walks by the house and it stinks to high heaven. And my sister had two big bone German Shepherds, 125 pounds each. And the dogs went absolutely crazy. And, it's late at night. I got to drag the dogs in the garage because they're going to wake up the whole house. And my sister had 3 young kids. And my brother-in-law owned a restaurant, Italian restaurant in town, and he got home late. So, he must have just got home. The restaurant went on around 12, and he was going to bed. And he was like, don't make any noise because I don't want to hear you guys. Because, he's 12, I'm 15. We're jumping off the couches, attacking each other,
Of course.
And because we're watching wrestling,
Right, of course.
So this thing goes by, and, again, we don't see anything. We just smell this really bad smell. We tell my sister, my brother-in-law, and so, well, it must have been the skunk ape that came by, And again, even though we were seeing it on the news, it was just hard to wrap our minds around it, being from the city. We talked to all our local friends in the neighborhood, and they were like, oh, yeah, when it's hot like this and when, the skunk ape comes around. We've been down to Florida for years. Every summer we went down there and we never heard anything like this before, know.
It's hard to imagine. Yeah.
And so, again, so that was the first, I would say, experience with the skunk ape, having it walk past the house and stinking high hell. And I believe the reason it smelled so bad that night was because the dogs went crazy. And I think because the dogs went crazy, it let out this scent, like a warning to the dogs, you better stay back because you may not survive this meetup. And so that happened. And so then a couple of nights went by, and my brother-in-law gets home from work, and like he used to bring all the burnt pizzas home, right?
Oh,
and
man.
Me and my cousin, we would go out on the patio and we would eat all the burnt pizzas. It was our midnight snack because, being from New York, we like our pizza well done,
Of course.
And so we were sitting out on the patio having the pizza. My sister came out of the bedroom because her sliding glass door opens to the patio. They had 2 openings, from the living room and from their master bedroom.
Okay.
And she came out, and my brother-in-law was out there, and we're all hanging out. She's, how was business tonight? Yada, yada, yada. And all of a sudden, we start hearing gunfire coming from the north end of the development. And so we run to the front of the house. And the one great thing about Florida is everything is flat.
Sure.
If there's no houses or trees in the way, you could see for miles. And
Okay.
we're standing in the front of the house, and we could see all the way down to where the greenhouse was, because there weren't any houses built in that line of sight. And
Okay.
we could see our friend's father blasting away with a 30-30, boom, 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 right? And my brother-in-law says, jump on your bikes, your dirt bikes, and go down there and see what's going on.
Yeah.
So we jump on our dirt bikes and we cut across everybody's lawns. We weren't taking the street. We were going there as fast as we could. We went across everybody's lawns. Some
Right.
people some were empty lots, some were people's property. We just blew through everything. We went
Right.
down there. We got down there. Our friends who lived across the street from the cattle rancher, they were already outside. His father was outside.
Right.
Our friend who was the son of the cattle, he was outside, and we're all talking, and we're like, what's going on? And he goes, my father just imported a new horse from like Montana or Wyoming or something like
Okay.
that. He said, I don't know if it was a Mustang or what it actually was, and he said he had to keep it in the corral. Because he couldn't put it in the stalls with the other horses because it would kick and it made all the other horses nervous.
Well,
So
sure.
he left it in the corral at night. They had a Seminole Indian come in every day to work the horse to try to break it.
Okay.
Well, this horse was in the corral, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. This creature snuck up on it and grabbed it from its hind quarters. Okay.
Oh.
And this is what the Native American told us when he brought the horse back in. He said, well, the horse must have kicked the creature.
Okay.
The creature let go. The horse jumped the corral. Once they got into the pasture, it was too fast for the creature to get. And by then, the horse rancher is outside shooting at the creature, which he said just turned and went straight back the way he came, right into the swamp.
Okay.
So the sheriff comes and he tells, everybody's talking. Me and my cousins were eavesdropping, listening to the sheriff and this, that, and the other thing. And the sheriff's like, yeah, come back tomorrow. We'll do a report, official report.
Right.
For now, we'll just drive around the block, make sure everything is okay.
Right.
The next day we go down there because we can see the sheriff's car in front of the house with the lights going. So we jump on our dirt bikes, we go back down. Boom.
Sure.
We get down there. Now the Native American is there. And he gets on a horse and he goes out to the pasture to get the wild Mustang or whatever it is. He brings it back into the corral. And when he brings it back into the corral, the horse has got fingerprints on its hindquarters. Not claw marks, but if I was to grab you by your wrist and squeeze as hard as I can and then let up, you see that indentation it leaves in your hand?
My goodness.
Well, that's what it had. And that's what the Native American said. The creature must have snuck up and grabbed it from behind. And that's what he said. The horse must have kicked them to get away, because the corral wasn't that high. It was only 4 feet high. The horse could jump over that if it wanted to.
Right.
So the sheriff said, okay, we're gonna start picking up the patrols in this neighborhood because you guys are on the outskirts. I mean, we're really on the outskirts. And, you're surrounded we had swamps on all 4 sides of us. The Everglades were behind us. And he says, we're going to pick up the patrols. Okay, no problem. Couple of weeks go by, maybe a week and a half goes by. It's pretty quiet. Nothing happens. And we're not really thinking about the next skunk ape, thing. We're thinking about doing our chores in the morning, getting them done before it gets too hot. Because my brother-in-law used us for everything. We were in Florida. But we painted the house, we popcorned ceilings, we built planters for my sister on the patio, we cut grass, we did everything. But he took us to Disney World and SeaWorld and all that stuff too. But so we were down there and wasn't really thinking too much about the skunk ape. And my brother-in-law and sister had friends flying in from New York, and he was taking them out dinner and dancing in Miami. And he said, look, you guys take care of the kids. You guys watch the kids tonight. You know where the guns are. So
Right.
anything happens, let the dogs out. Let the
Right.
dogs
Right.
be your first line of defense. Yada yada
Right.
yada.
Right.
And we're like, yeah, no, we got this. We're all under control.
Right.
We shoot the guns every day. We know how to use the guns.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, not that we were ever expecting anything to happen that night.
Right.
It was a pretty quiet night. Kids went to bed on time. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, they pull into the driveway, and when they do, of course, the dogs go crazy. They run to the front door. We let the dogs out, and my brother-in-law just bought a brand new Lincoln Continental Mark IV or 3 or something like that, but it was brand spanking new at the time. And
Right.
my sister gets out, and we're all talking. And my brother-in-law's like, "Any action tonight?" And they're like, "No, quiet night." No
Right.
sooner did we say that, we hear the most horrific scream that sends chills down your spine. I mean, it was something like I've never heard before or ever again.
Okay.
And it freaked my sister out so much that she
Yeah.
grabbed both dogs by the collar and ran in the house with them.
Oh,
That's
wow.
how scared she was. At this point, we're looking towards the cattle rancher's house because
Sure.
that's where the scream came from.
Right.
And as we're looking, we see like a double barrel shotgun go off. Boom. Double barrel. So my brother-in-law says, jump in the car. Let's go see what's going on.
Yeah.
So my cousin Anthony jumps in the front seat. I go in the back. I tell my brother-in-law, open up the sunroof. I'm hanging out the sunroof
Yeah.
because I wanted
Yeah.
to get a better view because
Sure.
Anthony took shotgun, So I'm hanging out the sunroof. We get to our corner, and just as we get to our corner, the deputy is driving by us. And the deputy's driving really, really slow. And at the far end of the development, like a mile away, you can see other headlights. And we just assumed it was the sheriff. Now you got to understand, Davie is a small town. It's like, Mayberry. There's 2 cops. That's it, right? Sure. And we see one car going this way. We're behind the other. And the deputy has got his spotlight panned to his left. That's where the swamp is. He's looking to.
It was dark, Al. I just want to interrupt real quick.
There was no street lights back down there. No, absolutely not. Pitch black. You couldn't see a hand in front of your face.
Okay.
He's got his spotlight pointed to the left, and he's going like 2 miles an hour. We get stuck behind him, and my brother-in-law is like stressing. Oh my God, he doesn't want to drive around the cop, but
right.
And we're stuck behind this deputy, and he's looking to the left because that's where the swamp is, and we're all looking to the left. Everybody's looking to the left. Nobody is looking in front of us. And the creature comes running out of the darkness from our right. Oh. And the deputy hits it with his police car.
Wow.
Boom. Now, my brother-in-law jams on the brakes. This police car looked like it hit a telephone pole, okay? Oh, it stopped dead. The creature stumbled backwards and took down like a school crossing sign. Yeah. That was supposed to be unbendable, like it's supposed to be not bent up to 200-mile-an-hour hurricane winds. Sure, but when he landed on this sign, he pancaked that sign. Boom, right?
Wow.
So we're sitting there, and we see the creature get up, and he starts to limp across the road. Okay. My brother-in-law hits him with the high beam so we can get a better look.
Yeah.
I'm sticking out of the roof of the car, and I'm like, oh, my God, right?
Yeah.
And we can see the deputy silhouette in front of us with his hands on the steering wheel, just his silhouette. And back then, the police used to carry their shotguns in between the 2 passengers in the front.
Correct.
And we can see the shotgun, and we can see him with his hands on and the creature limps up to the front of this car. And he looks down at the deputy, and he screams. And when he screams, it goes right through you. And then he does like a hammer punch, boom, on the front of the car. And the back of the car comes off the ground, and we're like, oh my God. And this is all happening in slow motion.
But in front of you.
Still. Yes.
But in front of you.
Yeah, a car length in front of us. Yes.
Holy crap.
But this is like slow motion.
Sure.
Time stays still. and it limps off into the swamp. Now the sheriff comes around the corner. He comes flying up. He sees the police car all totaled. He
Right.
starts taking the deputy's report, and he's like, well, why didn't you shoot it? You had the shotgun right there.
Good question.
And the deputy's like, the shotgun wasn't big enough. It's like the
Yeah.
shotgun wasn't big enough.
Right.
So then what you call it? The cattle rancher, and he's taking our report too. He's taking our report too.
Sure.
And the cattle rancher comes driving up in his pickup truck, and he tells the sheriff, you got to come back to my ranch and see what this creature did to my prize bull. Okay. Now let me just backpedal a little bit. Well, the first time the creature went by the house, the very first time we smelt it,
right,
we went out and looked for footprints.
Okay.
And we found tracks that were like 18 inches long and 9 inches wide, and they were like 3 inches deep in the dirt, you know.
Right.
And so I'm missing something here. What am I missing? There was a second time the creature came by.
And you went jogging?
Yeah, no. The second time, I know what I'm missing. Before the cattle incident,
Correct.
we had gone. I'm sorry, this happened so long ago.
That's okay.
We had gone to bed. My cousin Anthony had gone to bed around 1:00 in the morning. We were watching like Don Kirshner's rock concert, and it started at 1, ended at 2, so it was 2:00 in the morning. And my sister had a pull-out couch that, like in a sunroom, and it had this giant picture window in front of us. It was 4 feet high and 8 feet wide, right? And she had a curtain you pulled down, and we're sitting in there, and we're just going to bed, and the sensor lights go on in the front of the house,
right?
And we see this giant shadow go across the front of the wall, and the dogs go crazy. And they run to the door and they're going crazy. I jump out of bed. I grab the dogs. I bring them in the garage and I shut them in the garage. I belly crawl back to the bed. My cousin Anthony's frozen like he's just scared stiff. He's not moving.
Yeah.
And I peek out the little corner of the window, just like an eyeball, right, looking out. Mm-hmm. And there, in the middle of the driveway, is this 9-foot. 4 feet wide, 4 feet thick, black, but it had red tint to its hair. I could see that from its eyes were red, but I don't know if it was from the sensor lights.
Okay.
And when it's seen its reflection in the glass.
Oh.
Okay. And it did like this incredible Hulk scream and flex, like almost like a threatening thing. And I thought it was screaming at me, you know. Right. Hindsight being 2020, probably seen its reflection. And then it walked along the side of the house.
Right.
When it walked along the side of the house, I pulled my cousin out of bed. I said, "Come on, we got to check this out." Yeah. We ran into the bathroom that were in between the kids' rooms. We left the lights off. The windows were tinted. The screen was black, and we were sitting there, and we're watching it walk along the fence line in this watermelon patch. Okay. And it's walking along the fence line the whole time, looking at us like it can see us
through the tinted glass in the dark.
In the dark, and we would duck down underneath the windowsill, and we pop back up, and we're watching this thing. And that's where I get my height from. The fence was 6 feet tall. This thing was head and shoulders above the fence. It had to be at least 9 feet tall. And then at one point, it stops, grabs a wild watermelon. Takes a bite of the wild watermelon. There's nothing but nubs left. Throws the nubs down, and it walks towards the back of the property. I grab my cousin. I drag him out to the patio because it's screened in. We keep the lights off. It's dark. Right. Because I know as it passes the back corner of the house, the sensor lights are going on again. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It walks past the back of the house. The sensor light's go on. Again, it turns and it looks at us. The whole time it's walking, it's looking at us like it can see us. Okay. And my sister had about 3 acres in the back. So it's a big yard, you know?
Yeah, sure.
And behind our house was a friend of ours who had a man-made lake. We would swim in that lake all the time because it was cooler than the pool water, right?
Right.
And it squatted down, and it one hand on the ground, it cupped water, it drank water out of the man-made lake.
Right.
It got up and it walked horizontally at a 45-degree angle into the swamp where we rode our dirt bikes.
Okay.
And when it got into the swamp, it just went off, started screaming, going crazy. And
Wow.
that next day, we told my brother-in-law, we went out, we measured the footprints. We found the footprints that night, the next
Right.
day. And he said, okay, I'm coming home from lunch today, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna make plaster plast. He wanted to put 2 up at the restaurant and the bar at the restaurant,
Sure.
and 2 at the bar at the house for conversation.
Sure.
Restaurant got busy. He never came home. Horse guys went by. They used to go right by our house all the time. Destroyed all the footprints. Never got any cash. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we fast forward back to the cattle rancher, right?
Yes.
The cattle rancher comes up and he says, you got to see what this thing to buy prize bull. Now, this prize bull, when I tell you, was the size, it was a Brahma bull. It was a white Brahma bull with a hump in its neck. And when I tell you it was the size of a minivan, if it weighed 2,500 pounds, it weighed an ounce. Okay.
Right.
And I know this because I had a close up encounter with this bull.
Right.
I used to jog the 2 miles every day. Okay. Because I was a more martial arts guy. My cousin Anthony was a weightlifter. He would be in the garage working out, and I would do more martial arts kind of stuff, exercises. And I'm jogging, and there was a lady who lived on the corner, one of the corners. She had a fenced-in house, but she had a what do you call those dogs? Like Cujo dog. Not the Huskies.
Is it a Saint Bernard?
Saint Bernard. She had a Saint Bernard, right? And this was right around the time Cujo came out.
Oh gosh.
Cujo, right? So I would run by this house every day, and the dog would go absolutely ballistic.
Right.
And I never thought anything of it because the dog was behind the fence.
Right.
Well, one particular day, I'm running by, and the lady who lives there is coming up the street, and she hits the automatic gate opener. The gate opens up, the dog comes out.
Right.
And he's charging me. Now I look back and I see this beast of a dog running me down.
Yikes.
There's no trees to climb up in Florida. There's no fences to climb up in Florida. And this thing is gaining on me.
Right.
And I'm looking around. I'm looking for an exit strategy here. And I see the cattle rancher's fence. His fence was small, 4-foot fence.
Right.
You know, he had tons of cows and everything. And I just do a dive. I dive right over this fence, head.
Right.
I do a dive over the fence head first. The Saint Bernard is too top heavy to jump it, so he jumps up against it with his paws, and he's barking. He's going crazy. He's got saliva coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And I look up, and there's this white Brahma bull staring at me like, what are you doing in my pasture, right? And I'm looking at the Brahma bull, and I'm looking at the cows that are and I don't know what kind of cows these were, but these cows were humongous.
Okay.
These are like the biggest cows I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if they were milk cows or beef cows or what they were, but they were huge. I remember saying to myself, I can't believe how big the cows are, never mind the bull, you know?
Right.
And then I said to myself, okay, we're going to walk in between the cows. We're going to use the cows as protection, so I can get out of the pasture, so the bull doesn't charge me.
Yeah.
But the dog was making so much noise that the bull was more focused on the dog. You know, the lady calls the dog back. The dog goes back to the house, but I sneak out the side gate. I don't get killed by the bull. I don't get bit by the dog. So. Yeah. I know how big this bull is. So when this farmer, this rancher tells the sheriff, you got to see what this creature did to my prize bull, I say in my head, I'm thinking, no way. Right. There's no way this creature could do anything to this bull. This thing is like a minivan. Right. So we go around the deputy. We leave the deputy there in the middle of the road. Sheriff calls a tow truck for him. We follow the sheriff who's following the rancher back to his house. Right. We go to the rancher's pasture, and the sheriff has got the spotlight out, and he's panning the pasture. And there in the middle of the pasture is this white Brahma bull bleeding out, just the torso, no head. No head.
Incredible.
And The sheriff pans like another 100 yards in a different direction, and there's the head at the other end of the pasture. Like this creature just stopped this bull and ripped its head off and threw its head away like it was just a waste. Now, the only thing I can think of, and this is not me as a 12-year-old kid, this is me now as an investigator.
Sure. Right.
Is there may have been calves in that pasture
Right.
that creature wanted,
Right.
not necessarily going after a full-size cow, but maybe a calf or something like that. And the bull charged him and he killed the bull. So we couldn't believe it. We were just dumbfounded.
Well, and just for a moment, just the idea. I've seen Brahma bulls. I've been around plenty of cattle in my life. And just the sheer force of that much of a body. For anyone that's not really paid attention to cows much or Brahma bulls, the base of their neck that goes up from their back to their head is enormous. It is not a skinny little cow's neck. A Brahma bull's chest and neck circumference is huge. So I'm trying to picture this, and I can't even imagine what kind of force it must have been to do that. That's incredible.
And when I'm sitting in the pasture looking at the bull, I've got like a thought going through my head, because we were just at the rodeo not too long ago on the 4th of July, and I was talking to all the cowboys who were riding the bulls. I thought it was so cool. And we were talking about the Brahma bulls, because our neighbor had one, and he said, "Oh, the Brahma bulls are ornery." He said they're the worst of all the bulls. He said they're really, they don't play, And I was like, "Oh, great! Now I'm stuck in the pasture with this thing, and this is what's going through my head."
Sure.
So so we go back to the house. The sheriff goes, "Go back to your house." We go back to our house. He calls in the state police, the county police, the town police, and they come with horses and dogs and helicopters, and they search the Everglades high and low all night long. You could hear the helicopter going, and they never found anything. We thought for sure that with all the reports of everything we seen on TV and on the news and in the newspapers and on the radio, that someone was going to knock on our door and ask us. We were eyewitnesses and we were right there. But for some reason, nobody ever came to the house. Nothing was ever. There was never any. We got the next morning, because my cousin was 15 and he had a Florida license. You could drive at 15. We jumped in my sister's car. We went to the local Winn-Dixie and we bought all the newspaper, thinking it was going to be in the newspapers. And there was nothing. There was nothing in any of the papers. And so we're hanging out, and where we used to go fishing in the turnaround, which was in the swamp. With the alligators. All the local kids would go swimming in the canals. And they would say, you can swim in the turnaround. The alligators don't come in the turnaround. Right. My cousin Anthony and I are thinking, you people are out of your minds, because there's fish here, there's frogs here, there's turtles here. There's all kinds of food for alligators, you know what I mean? Why wouldn't the alligators come in? I mean, they hand to God, they swam in that turnaround. And my cousin Anthony and I never went in, One day we're fishing at the turnaround, me and my cousin just fishing. There's nobody around. It was like a ghost town that day. We're fishing, and there's this alligator sunning himself, and he's floating in with the tide. He's floating in, and I swear to God, when he noticed where he was, I swear to God, his eyes opened up, and he turned and he ran on top of the water to get out of the turnaround. And my cousin looked at me, and I looked at him, and I was like, "Did you just see what I see?"
What just happened?
And we're like, "What was that all about?" So we told all our friends that what we seen, and they're like, and one of the kids who was like my age, who was really my friend, not my cousin's friend, he was like, I know why the alligator ran out of there. And I go, "Why?" He said, because the skunk apes have underground caverns in the canals. He said, that's why when they dive in the water to get away from people, they never find them. He said, and I bet you there's one in a turnaround.
Right.
And I was like, you're out of your mind, you know? And he's like, I'm going to go look for one. He goes, come on. I go, I'm not going in there. What are you, nuts?
Right.
And
Yeah.
he's like jumping in and out of the cattails. And I'm like, dude, you're going to get caught up in something and you're going to drown, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'll be fine. And, he was like a real little rebel, this kid, you know what I mean? And never wore shoes or anything like that. And, you know, don't even think he ever wore a shirt, to be honest with you, just jeans, you know? And he's diving around. And he comes up and he says, I found something. It's down about, 10 feet down. I found an opening. I'm going to swim in there. And I was like, no, don't go in there. I said, it's probably an alligator den. You're going to swim right into the mouth of a mother alligator. Please don't go in there. And he's like, I'm going in now. He goes, do me a favor. If I'm not back in 5 minutes, go get my brothers. He had like 3 brothers, older brothers. And I was like, okay. And he swam in and he came up an underground cavern. And he claims that there were openings all around him, like little caves all around him. He said that the smell was so bad down there that he couldn't breathe, and B, it was burning his eyes. When he came out of the water, he was bouncing off the ceiling. I had to hold him down because he was jumping up and down like he was out of control, and he stunk to high heaven. He smelled like a skunk ape. Yes. Yeah. And all he had on was jeans, but it must have been on his body and his hair, because all he had was a pair of jean shorts on. He never had any other clothes on. He smelled horrible. His eyes were all burnt. And he was like, I found it. You got to come with me. I want to show you. I was like, no. I'm not going in there. I mean, this kid, I know this kid wasn't acting, because the way he was bouncing off the wall, his adrenaline was going 1,000 miles an hour. And,
sure it was.
And I go, I'm not going in there. I said, think about this. If your father woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go take a piss and he seen somebody in his house, your father would shoot first and ask questions later. Yeah. What do you think the skunk ape is going to do if you pop your little head up out of that water and it just ripped the head off a bull? What is it going to do to your little head, you know? I was like, no, I'm not going to. And he came out and he was like, okay, you got to promise me you don't tell anybody, because if you tell, the authorities will come here and they'll demolition all of this land, you know? And that's where we all hung out. And we rode our dirt bikes and stuff. So I said, no, I won't tell anybody. I won't even tell my cousin, because this is just it was just us 2 that day. So it was between us. And I never told anybody anything. Right. And I remember telling my cousin, now my brother was already a paranormal investigator. He was working on his degree to become a parapsychologist. Right. And I remember telling my cousin, I can't wait to get back to New York to tell my brother what we experienced. This is going to blow his mind. Knowing my brother, if I would have told him, he would have went to Florida. He would have drove to Florida the next day. And my cousin is like, no, can't tell anybody. And I go, what do you mean I can't tell anybody? He goes, can't tell anybody. If you tell our family, the way our family shows love is by breaking your chops. And they're ruthless. They're merciless. You know what I mean? They've always broke my brother's chops about being a parapsychologist or a ghost hunter. I mean, so he's like, and he goes, if you tell anybody, I'm going to have to kick your ass, And my cousin Andy and we fought all the time, but he was like a brother to me, And I was like, I really didn't want to fight. He was strong. He was a weightlifter. He was big. And I was like, I really didn't want to fight him. You know what I mean? Right. So I was like, I won't tell anybody. Don't worry. I'm not going to tell anybody. When we got back to New York, the following weekend, my sister called me and said, you're never going to believe what happened. I said, what happened? Across the canal on the other side was another rancher who was good friends with my brother-in-law. His name was Ralph. And he said, Ralph's horse just had a pony. And Ralph had a lot of Native Americans working on the ranch, Ralph, what he did for a living, he was an insurance guy. He would go retrieve the boats that sunk in the Everglades,
Oh, okay.
and he would get the insurance money for him.
Okay.
Nobody wanted to dive with all of those alligators, but Ralph
Sure.
Ralph didn't have any
I
problem with
wouldn't.
it. I mean, he took
Right.
us out on fan boats, and we had amazing times in the Everglades. And he said Ralph's horse had a baby, and the skunk ape broke the door down to the barn and grabbed the pony by the neck and was dragging the pony off with him. And I
Oh,
don't know if it was the pony that actually bled or if it was the skunk ape that got injured pulling the door off the hinge. But when Ralph heard all the commotion, he woke up all the guys in the bunkhouse,
right.
and they all saddled up and got their guns, and
Right.
they tracked the skunk ape because they were following a blood trail, my sister
Sure.
said.
Okay.
And they must have caught up with him pretty quickly because they said when they got to the canal, the pony was laying on the side of the canal with a broken neck, but the skunk ape was gone. He must have dove into the canal, but he didn't take the pony with him, I guess, because it would have slowed him down.
Right.
And these guys, if they would have caught up with him before he got to that canal, they would have put him down.
Yeah.
These guys were cowboys. They
Right.
would have put that skunk ape down, especially after killing a brand new pony that was just born,
Oh, sure. Sure.
And my sister was like, "Yeah, I can't believe it. You guys left, and this happened at Ralph's farm." And no, 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 no.
Wow.
I was like, "Oh," and I was never told anybody about that story except for I did tell my two best friends, who
Yeah.
both knew my cousin Anthony, and they knew better to mention it to Anthony because he would have kicked all three of our asses. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
So, but I did tell my two best friends, and then when my brother was writing a book, it's called Frank Santariga, Paranormal Family and Friends, he
Mhm.
reached out to my sister because my mother was a psychic and my sister is an intuitive,
Right.
and
Yeah.
he reached out to my sister to see if she would have any like premonitions like my mom and this, that, and the other thing. And my sister said, "You should talk to your brother Al. Let him tell you what happened down here when him and Anthony were down here one summer with the skunk ape."
Oh
And my
boy.
brother's like, "What do you mean?" And my sister told him the story. So then he called me and he was like, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" I said, "Oh, because Anthony threatened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he couldn't validate it with my cousin Anthony because my cousin Anthony had already passed. And he
Ah.
couldn't validate it with my brother-in-law because my brother-in-law had passed. But he
Ah.
did validate it with me and my sister.
Okay. Okay.
And I told him the story. I mean, she told him the gist of it,
Sure.
but she didn't relive it like I did,
Sure.
because that thing has been burnt into my
Of
brain,
course it is. Of course.
And I tell people all the time, when you see these things and people say, "Oh, I want to see one, I want to see one." When you see these things up close and personal, your brain is going to shut down. It's
Yes.
not going to comprehend what your eyes are seeing
Right.
because they're not supposed to exist.
That's right.
And I remember telling a radio host one time, long time ago, he interviewed me and he said, "What'd you think it was?" And I said, "I thought it was a monster."
Yeah.
To me, it looked like King Kong. It
Yeah.
had the conical head. It had
Right.
canines.
Right.
And I said it was 9 feet tall. And I said, and I'm probably being light. And I say this all the time. I
Yeah.
go 100 pounds per foot. So I said it was about 900 pounds,
At
but I'm
least.
sure it was probably closer to 15 because when I tell you it was 4 feet wide and 4 feet thick,
Like
it
a
was
refrigerator. It was
Yes.
built like a refrigerator. It was huge.
And a woman from the BFRO heard the interview. No, she read the interview. I put it on the Skunk Ape Museum page. And she read it and she called me up and she said, "I'm a member of of the BFRO here in Florida. I'd love to take your report. I don't want to take it off of the museum. I want you to tell me it. And I want to put it on our thing, And I was like, absolutely. And she goes on to tell me that she was the same age as me in 74.
Oh, no kidding.
Her father had a business in Davie. And
Really?
the father would come home every night and tell them stories about what was going on. Skunk ape was seen here, skunk ape was seen there.
Okay.
And her uncle was a police officer in the town next to us. I think it was called Cooper City, it was called. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And he had two books, the official report and the unofficial report.
Okay.
And they would get calls. Again, you got to understand, this is 1974 in
Sure.
a cowboy town. He
Yeah.
would get calls from little old ladies saying, there's a 7-foot black man peeping Tom looking through my window. Please
Right.
send someone. And her uncle and his partner would show up, and they
Right.
would walk around the house from different sides, you know.
Yeah.
They would put the flashlight on, and he told her, said there would be a skunk ape looking through some lady's window, like watching TV through the window. And when he's seen them, he would run off, dive into the canal, and swim away.
Oh.
And he's got all these unofficial reports.
Yeah.
He told her that when he retired, he'd give her the book, and she could write a book about all those unofficial reports, because she said he had tons of them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And she went on, if you go on the BFR page, you look up South Florida skunk ape sighting 1974. What she did was she got an aerial view of Sunshine Acres.
Okay.
You know what it looks like today. Okay. Mm-hmm. And she marked where the horse rancher was, and she marked where the cattle rancher was, and she marked where our house was, and she marked where the swamp was where we hung out, because it's all this, they drained the swamp and they built up all homes now. It's a really high-end part of Florida at this point. But she did all of this, and then what she did at the very end of my report, she put in all the reports that were in the newspapers from the 70s.
Oh, wow.
You know, and all these different reports. She has to put like 20 different reports in that one report, on my report. You know, her name was Ree Merilith or something like that. I forgot what her last name was, but her first name was Ree. She did an amazing job. She went above and beyond the call of duty. And whenever I tell the story, if people want to talk to her, I'll reach out to Ree and she'll talk, because she put me in. She connected me with Sibylla Irwin, the artist, and Sibylla was in Texas at the time, and she did the rendering of my skunk ape, and that rendering is on that report as well.
Nice.
And me and Sibylla, we must have called each other 100 times, Skyped each other. Did it have this? Did it have that? She was supposed to do, at one point, she promised me she was going to do a color version of it to put the red highlights. But she never got around to it. It's the one that's there is black and white. I didn't bother her with it because, you know, she did it for free. So, but Ree did a fabulous job. And if you go to that report, and even if you don't want to read my stuff, just go to the end and see all of those reports that were in South Florida at that time. Mind-boggling.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love that more developed from that story over time, and that for you, at least as someone, as an experiencer, how edifying was that to find out that there were all these other reports? That had to be incredible.
Like I said, we were seeing them on the news. I mean, we would watch the news, and we would see these reports of, you know, I think it was a state police officer had his car backed up to the woods, you know, trying to catch speedsters. And he fell asleep in the car, and all of a sudden he felt the car go down in the back and then come up off the ground and be dropped. And he's like, what the hell just happened?
Right.
So he got out of his car with his flashlight, and he looked behind him to see, and there was a skunk ape behind his car. He jumped in the car and drove away. Then there was another one who said, I think he was a county cop. He was on a county road, and he said he's seen this thing run across was it Universal? The road, something, I forgot what road it was, but it was like a 3-lane highway, and it had a divider in the middle, and he was coming up one end, and he seen something run across all three lanes. Again, this is, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's a
Sure.
ghost town out there,
Right.
jump over the railing, the divider, and then run across right in front of him. And he was like, holy crap, you know what I mean? Did I just see what I seen, and like,
Yeah.
can't believe what he just seen. And there was a lot of, reports like that where the news guys would go to these old ladies' houses and say, we heard there was a peeping Tom here last night. What did you see? And she would
Right.
go on and say, yeah, I seen some, 7-foot black man looking in through my window. I called the cops and the cops came and ran away. But apparently he wasn't a black man. He was a skunk ape, and, and we would see that all the time. So we thought for sure that someone would come and interview us. And I don't know what happened between the state, the county, and the town, how they put the kibosh on it, maybe because they had to get the insurance for the new police car. And they, you know what I mean? They don't want to say that. Maybe they're going to say he hit a cow or something, or a horse.
Right. Well, back then, for people listening and watching this story, in 1974, that would have killed tourism. People would have moved out of town. The more this type of thing is spread, the more people sound crazy, or it sounds dangerous to the point of, no, we can't deal with this. And so in our day and age, these type of stories bring intrigue and fear and curiosity, all these things at once, but they're more accepted, is my point. And so back in the 70s, it was the tip of the iceberg. We were just barely acknowledging Bigfoot, and anything else along those lines was too much. It was too much. Yeah. People were not willing to listen. They were not willing to see. And what Al's describing in viewing this and being in shock, just listening to the story is fantastic. But imagine being there and imagine what that would be like. Every time stops. I saw Bigfoot when I was 12, and my experience was very mild and very short compared to yours. But I can say unequivocally, I froze and I didn't know what was happening. It's like I felt like I got hit by a Mack truck or something. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. My brain just kind of stalled.
Shut down. Yeah.
It was like, what's happening to me? And it was a life-altering moment, because it's not supposed to be real. What am I looking at? It might as well have been a unicorn or an elf or something. There was no way that was real, and it did look like a monster. It was massive, and it's like, that can't be real. Yeah, it's an incredible story. I love this story. I've heard it before, but I can't wait to have this recorded, and I'm gonna listen to it again and again, because there's so much about it, Al. I love the detail that you share, because the circumstances make sense. The fact that it's a swamp, the fact that there were fires, and
it drove all the animals inland. Absolutely,
which happens, which totally happens. I live in a part of Washington that's very heavily wooded, and as it gets hotter in the summer, by the end of July and the beginning of August, we get a ton of deer that start moving this way and walking right in front of our house, because they've got to get to the water. The lake's right by us, and it's like where they normally live isn't great in summer. They've got to come in where there's more trees and it's cooler.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine fires would be even triple that. They got to get away from it. Where are they going to go? Where it's populated, they have no other choice.
Yeah. So, and like I said, this was on the outskirts of the Everglades too. So as populated as it was, it's not what it looks like today. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. So, but I remember talking to the Native American Seminole Indian about him, and I was like, skunk ape, and he was like, this thing goes back for our culture. Like they Seminoles knew about it from the beginning of time. They knew that the skunk ape lived in the swamp, and that was his domain. He was the alpha, and it wasn't the alligators or the cougars or anything else.
Right.
It was the skunk ape, and yeah, and I mean, I'll tell you something that I don't usually talk about. There was a night when I was taking the two dogs out for a walk, right? I decided to just get out of the house and take the dogs for a walk. And we ended up going in the swamp. and the dogs kind of just pulled me because they were
Right.
chasing something, and they
Right.
was just dragging. I was barely keeping up with them, hanging on. And they treat a cougar, they treat a cougar up in the swamp where we hung out,
Right.
and
Right.
I couldn't get them. I wasn't strong enough to pull these 225-pound German Shepherds. And I had to run back to the house and get
Right.
my brother-in-law to come
Right.
and my cousin to come and pull these dogs back away because, I was afraid that the cougar was going to jump down. Well, they call it a panther down in Florida. The
Right.
panther was going to jump out of the tree and kill one of the dogs, maul
Well,
them,
yeah. Yeah.
and so was my brother-in-law. I mean, he loved his dogs,
Oh, sure.
and we ran in there with the guns. And when we were pulling those dogs out of the swamp, off away from the tree, it was me, my cousin Anthony on one and him on the other. We must have got maybe 10, 12 feet away, and that panther jumped out of the tree and ran off. You know what I mean? So even the panthers, which were so rare down in South Florida in '74,
Right.
that even the panthers had come in from the fires in the Everglades. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, where else are they going to go? But
Yeah.
still, the whole thing is such an incredible story, and just the fact that you had what not everybody has the chance to rally their mind and measure. And so the fact that you had the motion lights at a height you could know, and the fence height, and all of these other ways to kind of measure, and then, the fact that it was huge, the footprints, all of that was incredible, other than what you saw. Because with memory, sometimes details get a little watery. But when you have fixed objects like that are solid, there's no doubt in your mind how far that was from the fence and how far it was from the light. And then to top it off, to see what it was capable of doing to a giant other animal that was capable of defending itself with horns on, mind you.
Yeah.
What the heck? That gives a whole new meaning to what is power and what kind of strength is in this animal. And that to me is enough reason to respect it, number one. And number two, we have a healthy fascination for these creatures, but there needs to be a lot of safety and respect in dealing with this situation, because that's intense and that's incredible. And if it can do that to something that massive, we're puny.
Oh yeah, yeah. I tell people all the time, like when I go out and I do my research, I tell whoever I'm bringing out with me, if we come across anything tonight, and whatever you do, don't run. Stand your ground, because you can't outrun these creatures. If they want you, they got you. Number one. Number two, if they really want you, they can sneak up on you at any time and take you. So if it's going to actually come out of the darkness and show itself to you, it's giving you a warning. It's time for you to leave. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But don't run. And I've had people run on me. Stop. You don't want to trigger their prey drive. You know what I mean? Please stop running. And again, people say, "Oh yeah, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm in the dark." Blah, blah, blah. And then the moment comes, and they're off to the races. So it's crazy. But you know what? You know what else helped me realize how tall it was? Because the 4th of July had just passed. Okay. And my brother-in-law was a big 4th of July guy. I remember driving up to North Carolina to get all the fireworks out of the warehouses.
Right.
And he had Roman candles on the fences.
Okay.
And I could barely reach the wick of the Roman candles to light them, because the fence was 6 foot high and they were 3 feet. So they were like 9 feet high,
Sure.
And I could, even with the long matchsticks, I could barely get there. And that's what helped me realize, wow, it's head and shoulders above the top of the fence, and I'm where its head is, I'm picturing a Roman candle. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I know it sounds stupid, but a 12-year-old kid, this is what I'm thinking, and how tall it was, and how I could barely light those Roman candles. You know what I mean? And so that's how I came up with the at least 9 foot tall. Yeah.
Well, but that's a reasonable perception.
Yeah. Well, because it just happened. We just did it.
Right. It
Yeah.
was fresh
So
in your mind. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It was fresh in your mind. And yeah, the whole experience to me is incredible. And I'm amazed that there wasn't more damage, because knowing that the skunk ape's hungry, thirsty, and frazzled because of the fire, and multiple fires probably, and the other
Yeah.
animals were
Multiple.
all tense and wild, and he's just trying to survive. So he's in survival mode to begin with. So no matter what he comes across, he's in defense mode. So
Oh,
that,
and then
yeah,
you have ranchers shooting at them too. You know what I mean?
exactly.
I mean, this one, the cattle guy, we seen a double barrel shotgun go off. It's If you ever seen a double barrel shotgun go off at night, it's very, very easy to recognize. You know
It's
what I mean?
massive. It's a big,
Boom.
right? Yes.
And the same thing with a 30-30. If you ever shot a 30-30 in the dark and you
Yeah,
see that muzzle flash, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom, you can, if you shot them at night, you could tell what kind of gun they were using.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's fast forward to where we are right now, and tell me, Al, how many types of these sort of creatures do you think there are? What's your best guess?
I would say as many different dog breeds as there are probably as many different Bigfoot breeds. I think there are different breeds. They look different. I think they all act the same, more or less.
Okay.
I think they look different, depending on where they were. Like the ones up by you are
Mhm.
12 feet tall,
Right.
3,000 pounds. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right.
The ones that I've seen over the years here in New York all resemble the Patty one,
Okay.
except for the white one I seen, and the only difference was the color of his hair.
Okay.
But every single one I've seen so far resembled Patty. But there are as many different dog breeds as there are as many different kinds of humans. I think
Yeah.
there's that many different kinds of. I mean, I know there the ones in Alaska are big, the ones
Right.
in Russia are big. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
I'm sure. I'm sure there are probably some in the Black Forest in Germany, in the Alps of Europe, between France and Italy and Austria, and up in the mountainous regions. You know what I mean?
Right.
But or maybe they don't exist in Europe, because Europe is such an old continent.
Right.
But I would bet my bottom dollar that if you went to the Black Forest, the Germany, they're in there.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
And wherever you find these creatures, here's just another thing, just to know, wherever you find Bigfoots, you're going to find dogmen as well. So
Yeah.
put that on the back burner as well if you're going in researching or investigating for Bigfoot. Be prepared, because we went in one night investigating, not expecting to find we were expecting to see UFOs, paranormal activity, and Bigfoot, and we
Right.
got bluff charged by a dog man. So you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
be prepared for the unexpected, and always, whenever you go into the woods, I tell this to a lot of my friends who are strictly Bigfooters.
Right.
They'll go in prepared to protect themselves physically with a gun or something, but
Right.
they don't protect themselves spiritually. And there is so many more things in the woods other than Bigfoot and dogmen, that if you're going to go into the woods, protect yourself physically and spiritually. Please, please, please.
Yeah. And that's, I want to touch on that too for just a second, because there's a lot of different philosophies about there being different types of Bigfoot, that some are more amicable towards humans than others, that some are more aggressive, that some are kinder, that some try to help us, and some are actually, they'd rather we were gone and would rather we were wiped off the planet because that's their planet first type idea. But genuinely, I feel like we have this commonality as human beings, that we understand what a bear is and we don't want to mess with them. We are fascinated by them and we're curious, and we like watching them, especially on TV from a distance, a
Absolutely.
safe distance. But they're amazing. You watch them grab a fish and eat it, or climb a tree, or whatever it is they're doing, and they look cuddly and cute when they're with their babies and all that good stuff. But you never really forget that that's a wild animal. That is a wild creature, always, from the minute it's born till the day it dies. It's wild. But when we come to the Bigfoot phenomenon, it feels like to me people have this fanciful idea that they just need to go look. They just want to go see. And they treat it very lightly, like, well, I'm just hiking. I probably won't see anything. But then what if you do? Then what? I mean, how do you even prepare for that? I don't know how I would explain it to someone that you're invading someone else's space. How do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, you have to have a plan B. That's for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've been out scouting locations, and I have about 5 different locations that I work now here in New York.
Right.
And I see parents, on their cell phones and letting the kids run off like, 100 yards ahead of them. And
right.
those kids go around one of those turns on the trail. And by the time the parents get there, they could be gone. And
Right.
They're not even, it's one thing if the kids are and they have a dog with them, they're walking with a dog or something,
Right.
but if there's just 2 kids messing around, little boys running around, throwing rocks at each other and sticks, and they
Right.
get too far. And I look at these people and they're walking through the woods. And, here in New York, I just come back from a wolf reserve, and I actually got the people at the wolf reserve to admit that wolves are back here in New York. Okay. And I know the mountain lions are here because we've seen them on cameras. We've caught them on cameras.
Right.
I know the Bigfoots are here. I know the dogmen are here. But now the wolves are back too. Okay. Right. That's another apex predator in the woods. Right. And I see these people, they're out there. All they have is a bottle of water and their cell phone, and they're in the middle of the woods. And what makes you think you're going to be able to connect to a cell phone tower in the middle of the woods in a case of an emergency? Because they have nothing to protect themselves with. No survival knife, no air horn, no whistle, no nothing.
Right.
Do you think if a mountain lion grabs your child, you're going to beat it off with a stick? Right. That stick is not going to hurt that thing. Right. You know what I mean? It's just not. Right. You need to have some cold steel between you and these things. And I look at these people and I just shake my head, and I was like, yeah, I don't say nothing. It's none of my business to tell people how to raise their kids. Right. But you should never let your children run off at a site. You know what I mean? If you're coming to a turn on the trail, right, you have to tell your children, stop right there until I get there. And don't let them make that turn, because by the time you get there, they can be gone. And it's just, they just walk around, especially now after COVID. We had so many city people move upstate where I live now, Sure. And these people have no clue what's in the woods. And they're walking through the woods like they're walking through Central Park. Yeah. And I'm looking at it, and they look at me like I'm crazy because I got an 18-inch machete and a 12-inch survival knife. You know what I mean? And they're looking at me like I'm nuts. They don't know about the 9mm on my ankle. You know what I mean? But I mean, like, lady, you should keep an eye on your kids, or they have, like, the kids are walking these little the little lap dogs, you know what I mean? Like, I used to take my dog to the woods when my son was out there with my dog and we were all walking together. I had a 125-pound canine German Shepherd. Sure. You know what I mean? Sure. If nothing else, he would have got in front of my son, and he would have barked, and he would have made all kinds of noise, and I would have got there, Right. If nothing else, But I mean, I just don't know what people nowadays, they have no concept of what's out there. No. Like I said, a lot of the Bigfooters, they'll protect themselves with machetes and knives and guns and stuff, but they won't protect themselves spiritually. And there are so many things in the woods, just so many things that come in and out of our realm all the time. You have to protect yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. So after all the stuff that you've been through, what fascinates you the most about this type of investigation these days? What are you most curious about? What are you looking into the most these days?
Whatever comes my way. You know what I mean? I've been doing a lot of research at a haunted hotel up in the Catskills.
Okay.
Oh, did I send you the photographs from that pitch from the?
Not yet. Not
No,
yet.
I didn't send them to you. Oh my
Okay.
God! Wait till you see the photographs. I'll send you. Yeah,
Okay.
I've been
Cool.
doing a lot of research at a haunted hotel in the Catskills. Me and my cousin, who I've been going out with, he's a 20-year-old kid, and he's
Right.
just getting into this stuff. And we've been doing a lot of stuff there, which is pretty. The place is pretty amazing. You know, it's been around
Yeah.
since the 1700s, and I know the owner of it, and a friend of mine runs a meetup there, a paranormal meetup,
Yeah.
and you know, we try to make it every month, but you know, obviously, you know, life gets in the way. But
Right.
I've been doing that, so I've been dealing with a lot of paranormal stuff, getting ready to go back out, doing a video. I'm doing a thing this year. Friend of mine, Chris Reinhardt, he's got a podcast called Discover Sasquatch.
Hmm.
Originally, his group was called Berkshire Mountain Bigfoot from Connecticut. He works the Berkshire Mountains,
Okay.
and he wants to do like what do I call this? A Bigfoot safari, where he's going to go to all these different locations across the country and
Okay.
film everything. And I'm going to go up to the Berkshires. He's going to come down here. Actually, he's on his way to Florida this weekend. But he's got a lot of activity right behind his house. So
Right.
I can't wait to get up there. I've been up to his location once,
Right.
and I had something run right past me, but it
Oh
was
yeah.
invisible.
Oh.
It was invisible, and the only reason why I knew, for two reasons, I knew something ran past me. Number
Okay.
one, the bush in front of me shook
Okay.
violently, and I was nowhere near it, and there
All
was no
right.
wind or anything. And number two, I felt a cold breeze go by. Okay.
Oh.
Now, my partner, Brian, who was walking down, he was on the trail behind me, and he felt the cold breeze go by. And he was like, dude, did you just feel that? And I go, yeah. He goes, why is that bush moving? I said, because something just ran through it, you know? And we don't know if it was spirit, if it was Bigfoot. We don't know
Right.
what it was,
Right.
but it was during the middle of the day, you
Right.
know, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, bright sunny day, and that happened. So I'm looking forward to getting up there at night. I could imagine what's going to happen at night if we get
Yeah.
that kind of action. He was down here. Chris was down here last summer, and I brought him to my sacred site. And he doesn't really know anything about paranormal. He's
Okay.
just starting to get into that.
Okay.
And we had an event happen to us that night at the sacred site that was so paranormal. I believe something attached to him because he was cold to the core. He couldn't get warm. It
Wow.
was a weird day. It was beautiful sunny day down
Yeah.
on the lake. But
Right.
when we got up to the sacred site, which is on a high plateau, it
Right.
was dark and it was windy and it was cold. And all I was wearing was a down vest. He had a
Okay.
big, heavy hunting jacket on and he couldn't get warm. And I
Wow.
seen something go by us that looked like a skinny Bigfoot, but it was hopping like a ringtail lemur across from tree to tree. But
Really?
it was weird looking. He kept getting drawn. He kept getting drawn to the western ridge, which is the ridge they come over, the Bigfoots, because I
Okay.
believe their home range is on the other side of that ridge.
Okay.
Now, I made a deal with them that I would never go over that ridge to the other
Okay.
side. But
Right.
recently, Alarek, the white Sasquatch,
Okay.
came to me in a dream
Okay.
and he told me to come over. So now that he told me he was an ancient one and he was a
Okay.
king shaman,
Okay.
and he told me it was okay for me to come over the ridge now after
How
all
do you
these years.
feel about that?
I told him in the dream no, because I made the deal, you know.
Right.
I said
Right.
no, but my psychic has been having contact with Alaric as well, and she's in Arkansas.
Okay.
And Chris has been having contact with Alaric, and he's in Connecticut. So we're all in contact with this one white Sasquatch. And I told my psychic, I had made this deal many, many years ago, and I don't want to break the deal with that clan.
Right.
And she's like, Al, you don't understand. Alaric is the man. He's like 10 foot tall, 2,000 pounds. Like if he's telling you it's time to go over, it's time for you to take your investigation over the ridge into their home range. So we're thinking of going over the ridge this summer and camping there for a weekend. See what happens.
Oh, I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So we bring our tents and everything, and we'll go over the ridge, and let's see what happens, because Chris was, he was pretty shaken up the first time with all the paranormal stuff going on.
Sure.
I mean, you'll appreciate this. Yeah. There's a guy who knows nothing about the paranormal. I like to go old school, new school, right?
Right.
I take a military grade compass and I put it at his feet.
Right.
And it's spinning like a top. And he looks at me like, what does that mean? And I start laughing. I put it away. I take out my quartz crystal pendulum, and I put it over his head, and it starts spinning like a top.
Right.
And he's like, what does this mean? Now I know in my head, this is telling me you have energy attached to you.
Yes, you do.
But I'm not telling him that yet because he's not a paranormal guy. I don't want to freak him out. He's a Bigfooter. So then I take my dowsing rods and I go to each section of the sacred sites, north, east, west, and south. Okay. And I turn my back to Chris and I put the dowsing rods out. And then I turn around and they point to Chris. No matter where I was, they pointed to Chris. So then I gave them to Chris. I said, go over to the east section of the sacred site and see if they point to me. Maybe it's the base camp,
Sure. Right.
He goes over to the east section of the ridge and he pulls them up and he points them at me and they turn around and they point to him.
I love it. I love it.
I knew you'd love that.
Oh my God. Well, I bet his face was like, what is happening?
He was white as a ghost.
I bet.
I go, look, you have something attached to you.
Heck yeah.
We're gonna leave. You can't get. He was supposed to sleep over at my house that night. It was like, you can't get warm. You're in a hunting coat. You can't. I got a down vest on. I'm sweating. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
We leave the sacred site where there's black smoke swirling counterclockwise, and he's seeing this thing that looks like a mix between a giant blackbird, like a turkey vulture,
right,
and almost a humanoid shapes swirling in the wind.
Okay.
We leave, we go down, we hike down off the ridge. It's maybe a mile and a half down to the Appalachian Trail. Hike another maybe 2 miles to the mouth of the lake. We get to the mouth of the lake. Beautiful sunny day. It's 100 degrees out, and his teeth are chattering.
Oh.
So I get him down there. I cleanse him.
Right.
I do everything. I go above and beyond the call of duty. I cleanse him. By the time we walked from the mouth of the lake to the ranger station, which was a mile, he was back to normal. He was sweating profusely. He was like, got to take this heavy jacket off,
That's awesome.
Got back then we had to another half a mile to our car,
right,
to the trailhead. And by the time he got to the trailhead, he was like, I'm fine now. This was too much for me. I just want to go home, Yeah. And I was like, absolutely. If you want, it was early enough in the day to go because, I like to do day-night investigations to see how the energy changes.
Because it does.
Yes. Yeah. And I do 2 or 3 different rituals I do as well to change the energy. And we were there we got in there maybe 2:00 and we left there about 7. It was still Right now, it must have been early because it was still light out. Maybe 5. We left around 5.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to leave because I had already hunkered down, had all my equipment out on
Right.
location. I was ready to go. And
Right.
but he couldn't get warm for the life of me. And where we are, we can't light any kind of fires because the woods had already been burned down once there.
Yeah,
So this year I came up with a way to have fire, but controlled fire.
Okay. How's that?
I bought those sternos.
Yeah.
Okay. I bought the sternos, and I'm going to bring a pop-up pan, put the sternos in the pan, light the sternos.
Okay.
Throw a little pan across the top of the big pan with the sternos with water, so the water heats up. So we'll have steam heat.
That's perfect.
So we can stay warm. And then when we leave, I bought a fire bag. Okay. I'm going to take the sternos and put them in the fire bag. This way they don't burn through my backpack because they're going to be hot when we leave, you know?
I've never heard of a fire bag. That's amazing.
Yeah, they have fire bags that people use in their house for important documents, you know what I mean? Okay. So, but the fire bag will hold like 6 sternos. And each sterno, I think I bought the ones that last like 6 hours each. So I figured, 2, 4 of them the most, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
After, at least we'll have steam heat, we'll have controlled fire, right? We don't have to worry about leaves blowing around, setting the woods on fire. We'll have controlled fire. I'll have a pop-up pan, a camping pan that flattens down and pops up, so I can keep the sternos in there.
Nice.
And I figured it all out this year. This way, when we go back, because we're going to go back twice. Once early, either in the spring when he gets back from Florida now, or in the summer. But we're also going to go back in the fall, you know. Nice. And I figured in the fall we're going to need something because, like I said, the hand warmers were as a cutting it last year for him, you know.
Right.
And he's like, let's build a fire. And I'm like, no, we're not building a fire. Don't build fires here.
Right.
I don't want to give away my location where I'm at. Number one, I use glow sticks for ambient light, and I got a headlamp if I really want to see where I'm going.
Right.
But this way I can have a controlled fire, and we'll just pour a little water inside a flat pan so we can get the steam off of it to stay warm. And those 2 little sternos will give us all the heat we need to keep us warm. And like I said, when I'm done, I'll take the water that was in the pan, splash it over the sternos to cool them off.
Right.
And then take the sternos and throw them in the fire bag so they don't burn through my backpack.
That's awesome.
I was thinking about it. I was like, all these years I've been going there, and I got a ski outfit that I wear. It's a full body outfit.
Right.
Okay. And I can roll it up and put it on the back of my backpack, almost like a sleeping bag kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And if it gets cold, I can put that over it, whatever I'm wearing.
Right.
And believe me, it's waterproof. If it rains, I'm not going to get wet. And it's hot. I never wear it. Even when I've been there, when it's been 20 degrees out, I still don't put the ski outfit on because it's too hot, but I take it all the time. Now, I won't need it because I'll have heat.
That's awesome.
Fire. Yeah.
But that makes a lot of sense. And I love that you can contain it in something small and it's still safe for the wood. So you're not putting the woods at risk at all.
And that you won't see the flame because it's going to be at the bottom of the pop-up pan. You know what I mean? So the flames are not going to give our location away. And we'll have the water being warmed, which will give us steam to keep us warm, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. It's like, I've been going out for years, freezing my ass off. There's got to be a better way. Let me actually sit down and think about this. And then I started thinking sternos, fire bag. I need something to transport the sternos back because they're going to be hot. I'm not going to have them burn through my backpack because my equipment will be in there and it's too expensive.
Yeah.
Fire bag won't burn through a fire bag.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Anytime.
And sharing this amazing story. I love the story. It's so cool. And
Yeah, I'm
What is
sorry.
your
I
necklace?
forgot. I spoke out of turn because
That's
it's been
okay.
so long since I talked about it. I didn't have it all layered in my head,
That's
you
all
know?
right.
Yeah.
That's all right. You get it all out. So it
Yeah.
works. It works. The details are fascinating, and that's what makes it an amazing story, even more
Thank you.
so, because so much of your family is involved. You got so many people to corroborate what you saw in general, and then
Yeah.
having all the other stories from locals. That's phenomenal. I just love that.
Yeah. Like I said, if you go to the BFRO website, you look up 1974 Skunk Ape sighting in South Florida, and you could blow through all of my stuff and just go to the end and see all of those newspaper articles. She had to put in about 20 of them. I swear to
Right?
God. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, I'm going to have to check that out.
Okay.
So, if someone wants to reach you, Al, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Bronxville Paranormal Society is an easy way to reach me on Facebook, or you
Okay.
could just reach out to me on Facebook, private messenger, Facebook Messenger. If you have any questions, if you want to, you have anything you want me to answer any questions, but I'm the director of the New York State UFO Project, the director of the New York State Dogman Project, the director of the New York State Bigfoot Organization, the Bronxville Paranormal Society,
Yep.
and I'm also the regional director, Region 3 director of the North American Dogman Project. So, any of those pages you want to find me, you can find me on. But yeah, I mean, and I think the New York State UFO Project and the BPS page, they have hotlines, so you
Nice.
can call the hotline. And I don't get you, my partner Brian will, and he'll
Right.
direct you to me. Yeah.
But that's awesome. So Al's got a lot of experience. So if you have questions about any number of things to do with paranormal, Al's your guy. This is who you ask, because he's got a lot of connections and a ton of experience. So to me, it's beneficial just to ask you questions about whatever's involved in the paranormal. You definitely have been saturated with it your whole life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm very accessible. You know what I mean? If
Yeah,
anybody reaches out to me, I will not leave you hanging. I
right.
will get back to you. Absolutely.
Yep, I love that. So thank you again so
No,
much. It's always good to see you.
thank you for
Thank you
inviting
so
me
much.
on.
It's been awesome. And
I'm
this is
glad we were
Holly.
able to get StreamYard to work tonight.
Yes,
It's
I know. I
always
know.
a new kink with StreamYard. I
Right?
swear to God, yeah.
Exactly. Well, this is Holly from Holly's Pandorium saying thank you all for visiting and listening. And thank you again, Al, for spending time. This was great, as always. You guys have a wonderful day. Thanks.
Good night.